Chapter 1. The Video of Jessica. Brent Duke smelled pine, frost, and wet earth long before he saw the cabin. Montana air still clung to him even after 12 hours of driving back to Los Angeles. Cold morning breaths from elk country lingering in his lungs. His boots were still dirty. His jacket still carried the musk of the wild, and the sun was barely breaking when he pulled into his driveway. He expected to see Jessica's car. He didn't. The empty parking spot hit him with a twinge of disappointment. She was 8 months pregnant. She shouldn't be out this early. She shouldn't be out alone at all. He unlocked the door, stepped inside, and froze. His phone was vibrating on the counter. Dozens of missed calls. More than 40 messages. A flood of notifications from numbers he barely recognized. Brent felt something pull tight under his ribs. He tapped one voicemail, then another, then a third. None made sense. Words blurred into static panic. Call me. Have you seen? Brent, call now. No one can reach her. The video. Oh, God. He didn't breathe again until he heard one name. Brent, this is Detective Granville Downs. Call me immediately. Do not watch anything online. His heartbeat stuttered. Detective, do not watch anything online. A cold, military-trained instinct crawled up his spine. He opened the browser. The first headline was everywhere. Pregnant woman burned alive in gang message to mayor. His throat locked. His thumb trembled once before he steadied it. He clicked. The video loaded instantly, as if the world wanted it to hurt. A familiar Honda Civic. Jessica inside, her hands beating against the window. Her belly, God, 8 months, pressed against the steering wheel. Gasoline slick across the glass. Shadows of men laughing behind her. And then a camera phone angled in, too close, too steady. A man's voice. Smile, sweetheart. Daddy needs to see this. The patch on his jacket read, Reaper, President, Iron Kings MC. Brent didn't realize his hand had crushed the phone until the screen cracked like bone. He forced his fingers open, breathing slow, steady, controlled the way he was trained. Play it again, he whispered. He found another upload. Hit play. Jessica's screams hit harder the second time. Harder than gunfire. Harder than shrapnel. Harder than anything he'd endured in 20 years of war. Please, please, my baby. Emma, please. He squeezed his eyes shut. The inside of his skull throbbed with heat and pressure. He opened them again, forced himself to watch every frame. Ricardo, Reaper. Nash poured gasoline over the hood, over the roof, letting it drip through the cracked windshield onto her face. Jessica sobbed, screamed, begged. The gang laughed. One voice, a younger one, asked off camera, Boss, you sure about this? That's the mayor's daughter. Reaper snorted. That's the point. A lighter flicked. A tiny flame danced. Jessica's voice cracked into a raw, primal scream. Brent didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. He knew death. He had delivered it in deserts, jungles, alleys, and compounds. He had seen men burn before, but he had never watched someone he loved die. When the lighter dropped, when the firestorm ignited the cabin of the car, when Jessica's face vanished behind the roaring inferno, Brent didn't slam the laptop shut. He pressed replay and watched again and again. Outside, sirens screamed somewhere in the distance. Neighbors gathered on their porches, whispering, recognizing him from the news alerts. Husband of the pregnant woman killed in gang attack. Their faces were pale with horror. Inside the house, Brent finally stood. His breath was steady, too steady, dangerously calm. He picked up his phone and dialed the hospital where Downs said Jessica had been taken after firefighters recovered the body. Next of kin for Jessica Duke, he said. Brent Duke, I'm on my way. His voice didn't shake. His hands didn't. His lungs didn't. Something deeper than shock had taken hold. Something colder. Something that had been forged in MARSOC, refined over years of classified raids, drills, and kills. He grabbed his keys, grabbed his jacket, grabbed the folded ultrasound picture Jessica had taped to the fridge 3 days ago. Emma Duke, 34 weeks. A little fist raised like she was waving. His throat constricted, but just for a moment. Then his training crushed the feeling flat. The hospital was chaos. Reporters shoved microphones at anyone with a badge. Crying relatives filled the lobby. Police officers pushed them back. Somewhere someone shouted his name, but Brent walked through them like a ghost. He didn't stop until he saw Detective Downs. Downs was tall, gray-haired, sweating from stress and anger. When he saw Brent, his face softened. "Mr. Duke, Jesus Christ. I'm so sorry for what you saw. I told you not to." "I needed to," Brent replied. Downs swallowed. "I know who you are. I read your file. You were Marine Raiders, right?" "Was." Downs shifted uneasily. "Brent, I need you to listen to me. That video is evidence. The men responsible, Iron Kings, Alpha Chapter, they'll be hunted down. But not by you. Do you understand?" Brent didn't answer. Downs exhaled sharply. "Look, I don't want to treat you like a suspect, but I've seen the eyes of men who've been trained like you, and I know what vengeance looks like when it's just starting to boil." Again, Brent didn't respond. Downs stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You cannot go after them. You cannot interfere. Let's handle this." Brent's eyes flicked up, steady, level, dead calm. "You think I'm going to interfere? I think you already decided something the moment you press play." Brent didn't blink. "Where is she?" Downs hesitated, but finally pointed. "Room 14. And Brent, I'm begging you, don't do anything that'll make you join her." Brent brushed past him. Room 14 smelled of char and antiseptic. Jessica's body was under a white sheet. The edges were burned. Her hair was gone. The curve of her belly, Emma's last home, was black and collapsed. He pulled up a chair and sat beside her. He didn't cry, didn't tremble, didn't speak for a full minute. Finally, he exhaled, a breath that sounded like a man shedding the last of his humanity. He touched the sheet, right over where Jessica's hand would be. "I watched it 3 times," he whispered, "to make sure I understood." His jaw clenched. "To make sure I remembered their faces." Another long silence. Then quietly, almost tenderly, he said, "Jessica, Emma, I promise you this." He leaned in close, his forehead almost touching her covered hand. "I'm going to kill every Iron King before your funeral tomorrow." He stood, straightened his jacket, and walked out, calm, controlled, burning on the inside. Chapter 2. The Police, the Father-in-Law, and the Promise. Detective Granville Downs didn't wait long before finding Brent again. The hospital corridor was almost empty now. Late-night visitors had been escorted out. Only nurses, exhausted interns, and the occasional officer paced the hall. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, giving everything the bleached, unreal glow of a bad dream. Downs approached with a determined stride, a folder in one hand, coffee in the other. His tie was loose, his sleeves rolled, and his eyes carried the weight of a man who had seen too much violence in one career. "Mr. Duke," he called softly. Brent looked up from the chair outside Jessica's room. He had barely moved since he left her side. Only the slight clench of his jaw suggested he was still fully alive beneath the stillness. Downs pulled another chair over. "Mind if I sit?" Brent didn't respond. He neither agreed nor protested. Downs took it as permission and lowered himself, groaning slightly. "Rough day," the detective exhaled. Brent stared forward. "Ask your questions." Downs studied him for a beat. "You understand I'm trying to help, right? This isn't an interrogation, but we need your cooperation." "Ask," Brent repeated. The detective opened the folder. "When did you last speak to your wife?" "This morning, before my trip back." "She mention any threats? Worries? Anyone following her?" "No." Downs jotted that down. "The bikers, Iron Kings, Alpha Chapter. We've had intel on them for a while, but they're unpredictable, reckless, violent." He paused. "We didn't think they'd go after the mayor's family." "What's their hierarchy?" Brent asked suddenly. Downs blinked. "Why do you need to know that?" Brent didn't blink. "Answer." Downs hesitated. "President is Ricardo Nash, goes by Reaper. Under him, 3 lieutenants, 7 active soldiers. But we're not discussing operational details. That's for law enforcement." Brent's voice was flat. "Where do they operate?" Downs leaned in, lowering his voice. "Brent, I know what you're doing." "What's that?" "You're gathering intel." Brent didn't deny it. Downs continued. "I've seen this before. Guys with military backgrounds, special operations training, they lose someone, and the line between justice and revenge gets blurry." "Nothing blurry," Brent said quietly. Downs set his coffee aside and clasped his hands. Let me be clear. If you go after them, you'll die. These men aren't dumb. They're cornered now. They know they hit the mayor's family. They'll be armed, paranoid, and ready to shoot anything that moves. Brent's eyes flicked toward him for the first time. I'm not afraid of dying. Downs swallowed. That's what scares me. A nurse approached and whispered something to another officer. The officer hurried down the hall. Someone started crying softly behind a curtain. Downs leaned closer. Listen carefully. If you take one step toward those men, I will stop you. I don't care what your service record says. I don't care what you've survived. Brent's stare didn't shift. You won't stop me. Downs felt a cold ripple crawl up his spine. Not because of the words, but because Brent said them calmly, sincerely, like stating an inevitable fact. The detective slapped his folder closed. I'm begging you, Duke. Don't do anything stupid. For Jessica's sake. Let's handle this. Before Brent could answer, a sharp commotion erupted down the hall. A man's anguished voice echoed, raw, devastated, barely recognizable. Where is she? I need to see my daughter. Move. Downs stood instantly. Jesus, he's here. Brent rose without hurry. The man stumbled into view. Mayor Monroe Johnston. But the polished, confident political figure Brent knew was gone. In his place was a father whose world had collapsed. Johnston's eyes were red, his suit jacket hanging off one shoulder, tie half loosened like he'd ripped at it during a panic attack. Two officers tried to steady him, but he shoved past them until he saw Brent. Brent, my boy. His voice cracked violently as he reached him. Before Brent could brace, Johnston collided with him, clutching fistfuls of Brent's jacket like a drowning man grabbing a lifeline. His entire body shook. I'm sorry, the mayor sobbed. I'm so damn sorry. This is my fault. All of it. Brent gently gripped the older man's arms. No, yes. Johnston gasped for breath, tears streaming. They did this because of me. Because of that, Bill, because I stood up to them. They couldn't get to me, so they took Jessica and, oh God, and the baby. He collapsed further, nearly sinking to his knees. Brent held him upright. Johnston's hands trembled violently. You have to promise me something. Brent, please. He gripped Brent's face with both hands, forcing their eyes to lock. Don't do anything. Don't throw your life away. Don't go after them. Brent's expression didn't change. His silence was not agreement. It was a wall. The mayor's voice broke into frantic pleading. Listen to me. I can't lose you too. You're the only family I have left. Let the police handle this. Let the FBI handle it. Let anyone else, just not you. Downs cleared his throat quietly. He's right, Brent. Walk away. Grieve. Don't make this worse. But Brent's mind was already elsewhere. Somewhere dark. Somewhere far beyond grief. Somewhere only men trained to kill could reach. Johnston clung to him, sobbing into his shoulder. Promise me you won't do anything reckless. Please. Please. Brent said nothing. Not one word. Downs noticed, and he knew enough to feel dread gnawing in his stomach. After several minutes, nurses gently led the mayor away to a private room. Downs followed, giving Brent one last warning glance over his shoulder, with fear behind his eyes this time. Brent watched them go. Then he turned and walked back into room 14. Jessica's body lay where he had left it, covered, fragile, burned. He closed the door behind him. The room went silent. He approached the bed slowly, each step echoing in his bones. He brushed his hand along the sheet, tracing the outline of her arm, her shoulder, the curve of what had been their daughter. He sat on the stool beside her and bowed his head. The hum of the overhead light buzzed like faraway artillery. For a long moment, he simply breathed, steady, cold, soldier steady. Then Brent leaned down until his lips were inches from the shrouded body of the woman he loved. His voice was a whisper made of fire and steel. I'll finish this before tomorrow. Chapter 3, Calling an Orator Brother. The hospital's automatic doors slid open with a hiss behind Brent as he stepped into the night. The air was cold, sharp, carrying the faint smell of rain and the distant growl of highway traffic. His truck sat alone near the edge of the parking lot, paint dulled by dust from Montana. Brent didn't remember getting in. One blink he was outside. The next he was sitting in the driver's seat, engine rumbling like an animal ready to run. His phone lay on the passenger side. He stared at it. There was only one person he could call, one man who wouldn't ask questions he wasn't prepared to answer. One man who knew exactly what Brent was capable of because they had survived hell together. Brent scrolled to a contact saved under a name that didn't match the man anymore. D-Unit. He pressed call. The line rang twice before a groggy voice answered, thick with sleep and irritation. Brent? Brother, do you know what time I need you? Brent said. A long silence. The tone on the other end shifted instantly. Where are you? Devin Daniels asked, awake now, voice sharpened. L.A., are you hurt? No, Devin inhaled slow. Then this is about the news. I saw the video. Brent said nothing. Devin's breath crackled through the speaker. Say the word. Brent closed his eyes. Meet me at Unit 23. 2 hours. You got it, Devin replied. I'll be loaded. The call ended. Brent started driving. Unit 23, 2:14 a.m. The storage facility sat behind a chain-link fence topped with razor wire, the kind of place city inspectors avoided and criminals rented without paperwork. Floodlights buzzed overhead, casting pale halos on asphalt. Brent parked beside a row of roll-up garage doors. Unit 23 waited at the far end. Before he reached it, a voice called from the shadows. You look like Duke. Devin Daniels stepped into the light. He hadn't changed much, still broad, still sharp-eyed, still walking with a slight limp from the IED that should have killed him. The IED Brent had dragged him from under. Devin didn't offer a handshake. He wrapped Brent in a tight, bracing embrace. I'm sorry, man, he murmured. Brent didn't hug back, but he didn't pull away either. When Devin stepped back, he wiped his eyes discreetly. Let's get to work. He punched in a keypad code and rolled up the door. Inside was a private armory. Concrete floors, workbenches, crates, 2 duffel bags stuffed with gear. A generator sat in the corner humming faintly, and mounted on the wall, like art pieces, lay a series of weapons no civilian should have had access to. Devin grinned grimly as Brent stepped inside. Before you say anything, no, none of this is legal. Brent didn't smile. Good. Devin pointed to the first rack. Suppressed rifles. 300 blackout, integrally suppressed ARs. Quiet, clean, accurate. Next table. Body armor. Light plates, Raider style, flexible, not bulky. Another corner. Surveillance kits. Micro cams, phone cloners, burner tablets, thermal monocular. He lifted a dart gun. Tranquilizer rifle. Industrial stuff used on livestock. A clean way to take someone alive if we need intel. Then he slapped the fender of a white cargo van parked inside the unit. The side read, Danny's Pest Solutions. Completely fake. Unmarked, stolen 6 months ago from a dealership lot, Devin said. Plates swapped. Inside is rigged for transport. Brent inspected each item methodically. Everything we need. Devin nodded. Thought you might be coming someday. Brent paused. You expected this? Devin shrugged. Not this specifically. Just knew if the world ever hit you wrong. His expression hardened. You wouldn't call anyone else. Brent didn't argue. Mapping the enemy. Devin moved to the center of the unit, where he had already rolled out a large, foldable whiteboard. He clicked a marker open and began writing names. 7 confirmed Iron Kings, he said. These are the ones in LA Alpha chapter. Brent stepped beside him. Devin wrote. 1. Coy Sexton, Prospect 2. Tony Park, Runner 3. Freddie Vincent, Gun 4. James Farmer, Mechanic 5. Rupert Jacobs, Sergeant at Arms 6. Moses Warren, Vice President 7. Ricardo Reaper, Nash, President. Devin stepped back. These are our targets. Brent spoke for the first time in minutes. Where are they? Devin pointed at the lower names. Nash, Warren, Jacobs, Farmer, they're ghosts right now. Went dark after the hit. Cowboys like them fold inward when they poke the wrong political family. Cowards, Brent murmured. Devin nodded. Exactly. But the smaller ones? They're sloppy. Sexton, Park, Vincent, they still have apartments, phones, girlfriends posting selfies on Instagram with their location turned on. Brent's eyes narrowed. We start with them. Devin smiled grimly. I knew you'd say that. He opened a laptop and pulled up a series of maps with blinking pins. I've been tracking gang chatter, burner pings, dark web posts. and a few favors from some not-so-lawful friends. Brent leaned over the screen. The Iron Kings were scattering around the city, trying to hide. Devin tapped the map. We hit the small fries first. Extract intel. Confirm the big dog's location. And then, he drew a circle around a cluster of streets near the docks. We finished the job. Brent was silent, absorbing every detail the way he once absorbed battlefield briefs. Devin continued. Step 1. Grab Sexton. He's a prospect, lowest ranking. He'll crack fast. Alive, Brent said. Alive, Devin confirmed. Step 2. Park. More experienced, but still a coward. He'll know where they stashed weapons and safe houses. Brent nodded. Step 3. Vincent, Devin said. He's a shooter. Trigger-happy idiot. Probably the most dangerous of the small three, but also the most likely to slip. Brent folded his arms. We do it clean. Silent. No mistakes. Devin raised a brow. Brent, we're about to take down a motorcycle gang in one night. You really think there won't be mistakes? There won't be, Brent said flatly, and Devin believed him. Raider mode activated. They spent the next hour prepping gear. Brent strapped on armor, checking for mobility. Devin packed darts into magazines. A suppressor clicked onto a rifle with a soft metallic snick. Night vision lenses unfolded like mechanical wings. The van was stocked with zip ties, medical kits, portable restraints, duct tape, and weapon cases hidden under false flooring. Devin eyed Brent as he loaded rounds with cold precision. I want to say something stupid. Brent didn't look up. Then don't. But Devin said it anyway. If we do this, there's no turning back. Brent locked a magazine into place with a decisive click. There wasn't any turning back when they burned my wife. Devin exhaled slowly. Then we do it right. Raider style. Brent held out his hand. Devin clasped it. 2 warriors. 2 brothers. 2 men with blood on their pasts, and more coming on their futures. Then Brent nodded toward the whiteboard. 7 targets. Devin nodded back. We hit them in order. Smallest first, Brent said. And finish tonight. Brent's voice dropped to a lethal calm. No mistakes. Chapter 4, Coy Sexton, Riverside. Riverside after midnight was a different animal than Los Angeles. The sirens faded, the traffic thinned, and the low-rise apartment complexes along Arlington Avenue became pockets of flickering porch lights, barking dogs, and closed blinds behind which people pretended not to hear anything unusual. Perfect terrain for someone like Brent Duke. He parked the stolen white work van 2 blocks away from the Target building and stepped out into the warm, dry air. No wind, no witnesses. Good. He adjusted the baseball cap lower over his eyes and slung the small black backpack over his shoulder. Inside were zip ties, a roll of duct tape, a handheld jammer, and a few implements that only people with clearance at Camp Lejeune would even recognize. He checked the address again on Devin's phone. 3021, Northveld Court, Unit 2B. Coy Sexton, Iron Kings Prospect. 20, maybe 21. Small fish. Nervous. Weak link. Exactly the type Brent needed. The stairwell smelled like mildew and weed. A television blared from somewhere below, a canned sitcom laugh track echoing down the cracked concrete steps. Brent moved like a man who'd memorized the shadows before he entered them. By the time he reached the second-floor landing, he'd already picked out 3 blind spots and 2 escape routes. He listened at 2B's door first. Raider training had drilled that habit deep into his bones. Inside, footsteps, light pacing, then a muttered voice. Someone playing a first-person shooter. A controller clicking. Perfect. Brent slid the handheld jammer from his pocket and activated it with a soft beep. All wireless connections in a 20-foot radius were now dead. If Sexton had cameras, the feed just froze. If he had a phone in his hand, it just stopped working. Time to move. He knelt and worked 2 metal picks into the cheap lock. It clicked open in 6 seconds. He inhaled, exhaled, and slipped inside. The apartment was dim, lit mostly by the blue glow of a television screen. Coy Sexton sat on the floor in front of it, shirtless, tattoo outline half-finished on his shoulder, a game controller in his hands. He didn't hear Brent at all until Brent's forearm locked around his throat from behind and yanked him backward. Sexton choked out half a scream. Brent clamped a gloved hand over his mouth. Quiet, he whispered, calm enough to sound like a parent scolding child. Struggle, and you're dead in 3 seconds. Sexton froze. Good instincts for once. Brent dragged him backward, kicked the door shut, and swept a foot behind the prospect's heel, dropping him onto the hardwood floor. He zip-tied the kid's wrist behind his back, fast and practiced. Seconds later, Sexton was bound, gagged, and staring up at Brent with widening eyes. MMPH. Brent crouched, peeled the gag off, and put a knee into the kid's sternum, not hard enough to break anything, just enough to remind him who owned the room. You scream, Brent murmured, and I'll break your jaw so the police never identify you without dental records. Do you understand? Sexton nodded frantically. Good, Brent said. Now we talk. The kid swallowed. Look, man, I don't know anything serious. I'm just a prospect. I don't. Brent grabbed the back of his neck, forcing eye contact. Your club burned my wife alive. Sexton's breathing halted. He knew. They all knew. The video had gone viral. Brent continued, voice low, steady, lethal. You're going to tell me everything you know. Every member. Every stash. Every location. And if you lie, I will know. Sexton shifted nervously. I didn't do anything. I wasn't even there. I swear, I don't care. Brent lifted him by the collar and slammed him against the wall, the drywall dented under the force. Names. Start. Sexton rattled them off. Reaper. Jacobs. Farmer. Park. Vincent. Me. That's the 6. Brent tightened his grip. There are 7. Sexton hesitated. No, there's not. I mean, not officially. Meaning, the kid's lips trembled. Meaning he's not patched. Not public. Not on paper. Brent's eyes narrowed. Who? Sexton exhaled shakily. Moses. Moses Warren. There it was. The missing piece. The ghost member. Where is he? Brent asked. I don't know. He moves around, stays off-grid. Reaper uses him for cleanup. Transport. Heavy stuff. Brent filed the information away. Warren wouldn't stay hidden for long. He leaned back slightly. Next. The club's fallback. Where do they run when something big goes down? Sexton shook his head. I don't. Brent tapped him lightly behind the ear, a pressure point that made the kid's eyes roll for a moment. Try again. The panic cracked Sexton open. Terminal Island. Okay. There's a warehouse. Old shipping depot. Reaper bought it under an alias. They go there when things get hot. Stocked with guns, generators, food, like a damn bunker. Brent stared at him, evaluating. No tremor in the voice now. No hesitation. Truth. Good, he said quietly. You just save your life. Please, please don't kill me, Sexton whispered. I didn't touch your wife. I didn't even meet her. I swear to God. Brent stepped back. You're not worth killing. Sexton slumped in relief, sagging against the wall. Brent pulled out a knife, and the kid flinched like he'd been shot, but Brent merely cut the zip ties binding his ankles. You're going to do something for me, Brent said, standing. In 1 hour, you call the police and report a break-in. Don't mention me. Don't mention my questions. Just say someone robbed you and tied you up. Sexton nodded violently. Yes, I can do that. If you call earlier than an hour, Brent continued calmly, I'll know. And I'll come back. Sexton swallowed, so hard Brent could hear it. An hour. I swear. Brent walked toward the door. Sexton whispered behind him. Are you really going to go after all of them? Brent paused, hand on the doorknob. He didn't look back. I'm going to finish this before her funeral. Silence filled the room, the kind of silence that understood death was already on its way. Brent opened the door, stepped into the hallway, and closed it without another sound. The jammer deactivated with a soft click. The apartment returned to normal, except for the terrified heartbeat still thundering inside it. Brent moved down the stairs and out into the night, already dialing Devon. They had the 7th man. They had the fallback location, and they were one step closer to ending the Iron Kings. Chapter 5, Tony Park, Pomona. Pomona at 3:40 a.m. had the feel of a half-forgotten town, streetlights flickering, stray dogs crossing intersections, and an occasional car whispering down Holt Avenue like it was trying not to wake the dead. The kind of town where a man could disappear, or hide, or pretend the world wasn't burning around him. But Tony Park wasn't hidden. He was sloppy. Brent spotted the cousin's address from across the street. A beat-up single-story house with a sagging roof and a yellowed garage door covered in faded stickers, guns, bikes, Pomona proud, an appealing Iron King's decal that should have been scraped off 2 hours after Jessica died. Lights glowed faintly inside the garage, leaking through the slits of the warped panels. Tony was awake. Good. Awake meant conscious. Conscious meant he'd talked before Brent had to wake him up the hard way. Brent killed the van's headlights and coasted to a silent stop. The white work van blended perfectly alongside a row of neglected houses, each driveway littered with tools, broken chairs, and old engines. Devin had chosen well. The van didn't raise suspicion anywhere except a Beverly Hills cul-de-sac. Brent stepped out, moved through the shadows between cars, and circled to the back of the garage. A small horizontal window sat just above an oil-stained workbench inside. The glass was old. The lock was older. He listened first. Inside, music. Low, tinny hip-hop from a portable speaker. And someone muttering to themselves. Tony Park, mid-level Iron King. Not tough, but arrogant enough to think proximity to the gang made him untouchable. Brent pulled the train gun from his jacket. A compact CO2 power device, custom-made by Devin, firing darts dosed to drop a 200-pound man in under 10 seconds. He tapped the window lightly. No reaction. He tapped again, slightly harder. Still nothing. Perfect. He slid a thin metal wedge under the window frame and lifted. The wood gave way with barely a groan. Brent raised the trank gun, angled it down through the crack, and aimed for the neck. Tony walked into view exactly in the wrong place at the wrong time. Puffed. The dart hit him with a tiny hiss. OW, what the? Tony slapped his neck instinctively, pulling out the dart. What the hell? He staggered, reaching for his phone. Then his legs folded as if someone had kicked out the bones. His head hit the concrete floor with a dull thud. Out cold. Brent slid the window fully open and climbed quietly inside. He checked Tony's pulse. Strong. Steady. Good. He wanted him alive for the next 15 minutes. He opened the garage door from the inside, backed the van up until the rear doors touched the threshold, then dragged Tony across the floor by his jacket collar. The man was heavy, doughy, the kind of weight that came from beer and bad decisions. Brent hoisted him into the van with the same effort he'd used to load a sandbag. The doors shut with a muted click. Inside, Brent zip-tied Tony's hands and ankles, then slapped him lightly across the face. Wake up, Tony. The man didn't stir. Brent opened a small smelling salt capsule under his nose. Tony jolted back to consciousness like electricity shot through his skull. His eyes rolled wildly until they locked on Brent. Then he froze. Oh, God. Oh, hell. No, no, no. Brent spoke calmly. Inside voice, Tony. Tony swallowed. You're her husband. Yes, Brent said simply. And you're going to answer questions. I didn't kill her, Tony said instantly. I swear to God, I wasn't in that video, I know, Brent said. If you were, you wouldn't be breathing right now. Tony's breath caught. Brent leaned forward. Start talking. Tony's mouth opened and closed like a dying fish. About what? The warehouse, Brent replied. Terminal Island. Tell me what's inside. Tony hesitated too long. Brent flicked a knife out of his sleeve, clean, sharp, black, then slowly pressed the flat side of the blade under Tony's chin, tilting his head back just enough to steal the air from his lungs. Try again. Tony collapsed instantly. Rifles. Rifles, okay. Stolen crates, hundreds of them. AKs, ARs, shotguns, hell, even a few belt-fed monsters Reaper got from some guys in Nevada. The place is loaded. Brent didn't blink. How many men? Right now. Tony trembled. All the higher-ups. Reaper's calling it a last stand. Says the whole city's coming for us. Feds, cops, rivals, everyone. He's gearing up for war. Brent slid the blade away, letting Tony breathe. Who's guarding? Prospects. A bunch of them. Reaper pulled every warm body he could. They're watching the perimeter, the loading docks, the rooftop, everything. Brent studied him. How many prospects are we talking? Maybe 8? 10? I don't know. More might show up. Reaper told everyone to bunker down. Brent nodded and leaned back, considering. Tony's voice softened. Look, man. I didn't want any of this. I didn't even vote on the move against your wife. I wasn't there. You got to know that. Brent stared through him. Did you speak against it? Tony looked away. Reaper doesn't take votes like that. So no, Brent said. Tony's body sagged. Please, please don't kill me. I got a kid. Brent didn't react. And Jessica had one on the way. Tony shut his eyes tightly. Guilt or fear, or both carving lines into his face. Brent didn't raise his voice, didn't lean in, didn't threaten. He simply said, tell me what else I need to know. Tony whispered. Reaper wired the place. Says if cops rush in, he'll blow it sky high. Says if he's going down, he's taking everyone with him. That was new. That mattered. Brent filed it mentally, then opened the van door. Tony panicked. Wait, hey, where are you going? You can't leave me like this. Brent cut the zip tie on the man's ankles, then stood. Someone will find you. Tony blinked. Who? Brent closed the rear doors. The police. Tony's muffled voice leaked through the metal. No, don't leave me, don't leave. Brent walked back toward the driver's seat, unfazed by the begging. He wasn't here to serve vengeance to the small fish. He only needed intel, and the intel was solid. He started the engine. As he pulled away from the curb, Tony's voice became nothing more than background noise in the rearview mirror. Brent dialed Devon as he turned onto the main road. Park talked, he said, and warehouse is armed to the teeth. Prospects on guard. Reapers preparing for a final stand. Devon breathed out slowly. Then we're on the clock. Brent's jaw tightened. We were all ready. He hung up, eyes locked straight ahead, mind already calculating. 2 targets down, 5 left, and the Iron Kings were bracing for war. Chapter 6, Freddie Vincent, Starlight Motel. The Starlight Motel sat off an aging stretch of Route 66, the kind of place where the neon sign buzzed louder than the cars passing by. Half the rooms were dark, the other half lit by the blue glow of televisions and lonely men drinking themselves to sleep. The parking lot smelled like stale cigarettes and hot asphalt. Brent pulled into the farthest space, the white van blending perfectly between 2 broken-down pickups. Room 118 was Freddie Vincent's hideout. Devon had traced the biker's prepaid phone to this exact coordinates, and everything about the motel screamed coward's refuge. A thin strip of yellow light bled from beneath Vincent's door. Light meant he was awake. Awake meant he was armed. Perfect. Brent stepped out of the van, silent and controlled. He carried no train gun this time. Freddie was too unpredictable, too much of a live wire, too likely to shoot through walls and into bystanders. Better to meet him face to face. He reached the door, listened. Inside, pacing, nervous feet, something metal clanking, a gun magazine being loaded. Fast, sloppy, panicked. Freddie Vincent knew someone was coming for him. Brent's voice was a granite whisper. Open the door. Freddie. Silence. Then, the faint rustling of someone raising a weapon. Brent stepped aside. Boom. Buckshot tore through the door and exploded into the night air, shredding splinters that rained across the walkway. Freddie screamed inside. I told you not to come in here. Brent didn't wait. He kicked the door once, the top hinge cracked. Twice, the other hinge buckled. A third kick, the door ripped inward, hanging by the chain lock. Freddie fired again. Brent pivoted, letting the shot rip past his shoulder. Then he surged forward, ramming his boot into the chain lock. It snapped with a loud metallic ring. Brent burst inside. Freddie Vincent, mid-level Iron King, tattoos crawling up his neck, stood barefoot in a filthy tank top, sweating bullets, and aiming a sawed-off shotgun in shaking hands. Back off! Freddie screamed. Brent didn't. He dove left just as Freddie fired again. The blast slammed into the wall, blowing chunks of plaster out. Brent rolled, came up in a crouch, and fired one shot from his suppressed pistol. Freddie howled and dropped the shotgun, clutching his thigh as blood poured between his fingers. Non-fatal, Brent said calmly, rising. You're welcome. Freddie scrambled backward, slipping on a half-eaten pizza box on the floor. Oh God, don't kill me. Don't kill me. I wasn't even at the funeral. You were at the warehouse, Brent said. That's worse. Freddie's eyes widened. You know about that. Brent kicked the shotgun out of reach and grabbed Freddie by the collar, dragging him into the center of the room. The motel carpet was crusted with stains that looked older than both of them. Freddy whimpered, "I'll talk, man, I'll talk. Just tell me what you want." Brent lowered himself until Freddy could feel the heat of his breath. "I want names, locations, and the truth." Freddy nodded, so hard his teeth clicked. Okay, look, Reaper's inside the warehouse. So's Jacobs, Farmer, and Warren. All of them. Everyone who matters. 4 names. The only 4 that mattered." Brent's voice remained steady. "And they're prepared?" Freddy swallowed. "Prepared? They're going full Waco. They think the cops are coming. They got sandbags, machine guns. Reaper's got guys welding the exits shut." "Prospects?" Brent asked. "Every one of them," Freddy said quickly. "They're all on security. Roof, doors, back alley. They're expecting a siege. They know someone's coming." Brent's jaw tightened. "They saw my face." Freddy nodded again, frantic. "Reaper showed everyone the news. Said you were some kind of marine assassin coming for him." Brent didn't correct him. Freddy kept babbling. "He said if he sees you anywhere near Terminal Island, he'll turn the whole building into a crematorium. Said he'll blow it all just to spite you." Brent pressed a finger to Freddy's shoulder, applying just enough pressure to silence him. "Is it wired?" "Reaper's a psycho," Freddy whispered. "He bought explosives from some tweaker out in Barstow. He's got them strapped to the support beams. Some idiots say Warren wired them wrong, but I wouldn't count on that." Brent reached into his pocket and pulled out a small recorder. "Say it again," he said. Freddy blinked. "WH what?" "The names," Brent said. "All 4. And what they're planning." Freddy obeyed. Anything to keep breathing. His voice trembled through the recording. "Ricardo Nash, Rupert Jacobs, James Farmer, Moses Warren. They're all in the warehouse on Terminal Island. They're armed. They're expecting a siege. They're stocking up for war. And they know Brent Duke is coming. They all saw his face." Brent ended the recording and slipped the device back into his jacket. Freddy sagged in relief. "So that's it, right? You heard what you needed. You got what you came for." Brent stared at him. "I did." Freddy closed his eyes. Please don't. I'm not killing you, Freddy." Freddy let out a breath he'd been holding for what felt like years. "Thank God." Brent cut him off. "But you'll bleed out if you don't get help." Freddy's eyes snapped open. Panic returned instantly. Brent stood, grabbed the motel phone, and dialed 911. He didn't speak. He just set the receiver on the floor. Then he walked to the doorway and paused. Freddy stared up at him, pale and shaking. "WH, why leave me alive? After what happened? After what they did to your wife?" Brent didn't turn around. "Because I don't kill cowards," he said. Then he stepped outside. The air was cool, quiet, almost peaceful. Behind him, Freddy Vincent sobbed into the phone line, begging the dispatcher to hurry. Brent walked to the van, opened the door, and sat behind the wheel. 3 targets down. Only the core 4 remained, and every one of them was waiting inside the warehouse. Chapter 7. Preparing the Terminal Island Assault. The fog rolled across Terminal Island like a slow, creeping tide, thick, pale, swallowing sound and shape. Industrial cranes stood like fossilized skeletons in the distance, their silhouettes barely visible through the haze. The harbor slept, but the Iron Kings did not. Not tonight. Brent crouched behind a rusted shipping container, binoculars pressed to his face, breath held still as stone. Beside him, Devin knelt, one knee on the cold pavement, eyes scanning through a thermal scope. The 2 men didn't speak for several minutes. They didn't need to. The moment carried its own weight. Finally, Brent broke the silence. "Count them again." Devin whispered, 7 heat signatures outside, all armed. Brent lowered his binoculars and studied the fortress the Iron Kings had transformed the warehouse into. Floodlights burned across the yard in sharp angles, overlapping and blinding. Stacks of stolen crates acted like improvised barricades. And perched on the roof, barely visible, a man behind a mounted rifle scanned the dark with predatory patience. It wasn't a warehouse anymore. It was a bunker. Devin exhaled slowly. They're dug in. Hard. Reaper knew the police might hit them. But this is like they're waiting for war. "They're waiting for me," Brent said, voice flat. "They want to finish what they started." Devin swallowed, throat tight. He didn't need reminding. These were the men who burned Brent's pregnant wife alive. There were no boundaries to the rage inside Brent now. But rage alone wouldn't breach this stronghold. Devin shifted, refocusing the thermal scope. Look at the trucks. Box trucks, army crates, barrels. That warehouse is stacked with something. Stolen rifles, Brent said. Park confirmed it. And if Reaper's planning a last stand, he's not planning to surrender, Brent finished. The two scanned the compound again. Every angle, every guard, every potential entry point, every blind spot. Except there were none. No stealth approach could work. No sniper shot could break this. No negotiation would matter. Devin finally said the words Brent already knew. We can't infiltrate this. Brent's jaw tightened. No, we can't. The quiet hung heavy. But Brent wasn't a man you cornered. Not anymore. He was a Marine Raider, trained for impossible odds, engineered for unconventional warfare. He looked at the warehouse, at the guards pacing with rifles, and something cold and steady settled inside him. We don't break into it, Brent said. Devin turned. Then what? Brent stood. We obliterate it. Devin's eyebrows lifted, as in flatten it, to the foundations. A long beat passed. Devin set the thermal scope down. What's the plan? Brent didn't respond with words. He only said, come on, and started walking. They hiked a mile back to the abandoned construction zone where they'd parked. The site was a graveyard of half-finished infrastructure, concrete pillars, idle machinery, floodlights that flickered without purpose. But one thing wasn't abandoned. The fuel yard. Devin spotted it first. You're kidding. Brent stepped toward the chain-link fence, already inspecting angles. Diesel tanker, 8,000 gallons. Devin stared at him. You're thinking of turning that into a bomb. Brent didn't deny it. That's insane. This whole situation is insane, Brent said, eyes unblinking. That warehouse is a fortress. Diesel won't explode like gas, but with enough heat and pressure, and the charges. Brent nodded. Yup. Devin let out a low whistle. So, you're going to crash it through the front gate. Something like that. Brent cut the chain on the fuel yard gate with a silent hydraulic cutter. Then the two slipped inside. The tanker truck was parked behind a mound of cement bags, its massive silver tank dull with dust and grime. Brent climbed in, checking ignition, gauges fuel level. Full tank, he murmured. Perfect. Devin walked around it in a slow circle. If you hit the warehouse at even 15 miles per hour, the kinetic energy alone, I don't need physics, Dev, Brent said softly. I need the charges. Devin removed his backpack and pulled out 3 shaped charges the size of bricks, wires wrapped carefully around them. These are meant for breaching, not vaporizing a building. They'll do enough to turn a tanker into a pressure cooker. Devin hesitated. Brent, if this goes wrong, it won't. Devin stared hard at him. That's not a guarantee. That's blind determination. Brent finally stopped what he was doing and faced his friend. The anger, the grief. Devin saw all of it burning behind Brent's eyes like an eternal flame. I'm finishing this, Brent murmured. Tonight. Devin knew there was no arguing. So he didn't. He just nodded and set to work. Under the flicker of half-dead construction lamps, Devin crawled under the tanker, wiring the first charge. Sweat mixed with dust, turning to mud on his cheeks. Brent stood, watched the entire time, scanning the perimeter, listening for any sound that didn't belong. 15 minutes later, Devin slid out from under the truck. One placed under the midline. That'll rupture the tank. Good. Devin climbed onto the rig, placing the second charge against the rear of the tank. This one will ignite the diesel after it spills. And the third. Devin hesitated. Front cabin. Left side. It'll take out the driver. Brent nodded. Install it anyway. Devin stopped cold. Brent, if that charge blows with you inside, I won't be inside when it goes off. Devin stared at him, trying to read between the lines. Then what's the plan? Brent didn't answer. Brent. Still no answer. Brent. Finally, Brent said, some things you don't need to know. Devin slammed his palm against the tanker in frustration. Don't do this cryptic martyr shit. I'm not letting you commit suicide. It's not suicide, Brent said calmly. It's strategy. Devin narrowed his eyes. Bullshit. Brent stepped closer, voice dropping. Devin, you've stuck with me through everything these last days. You've helped me bury men who deserved it. You've helped me get justice for Jessica. But this, Terminal Island, this is the end game. And the consequences for what happens here, I'm not letting them fall on you. Devin felt his chest tighten. So that's what this is. Protecting me. Again. Always, Brent said quietly. Devin looked away, jaw working. I should be there. No, Brent said, firm. If something happens to me, someone needs to tell the truth. Someone needs to make sure Jessica's story isn't buried under police reports and gang spin. Devin swallowed, anger and grief twisting together. I don't want to be the guy who survives while you will, Brent said softly. And you will because I'm telling you to. That's how we make sure this ends the right way. Devin closed his eyes. Damn you, Brent. Brent placed a hand on his shoulder. Help me finish the rig. They installed the final charge in silence. When it was done, Brent climbed into the tanker's cab. The door creaked like an old hinge, crying out. Devin stood outside, fists clenched, breath shaking. You're sure about this? Brent nodded. Absolutely. Devin stepped back, eyes glassy. Then, I'll be on comms until you hit the bridge. No, Brent said. You leave now. Get as far from Terminal Island as you can. Devin shook his head. I'm not, Devin, Brent said softly. Go. The silence that followed was an elegy. Devin finally stepped away. Fighting back emotion he refused to let show. You better come back, he whispered. Brent didn't respond. He started the engine. The tanker roared to life. And Brent drove toward Terminal Island alone. Chapter 8. The Warehouse Inferno. The tanker roared across Terminal Island like a steel beast hungry for vengeance, its headlights cutting a white blade through the fog. Brent gripped the wheel so tightly his knuckles turned bone pale, the diesel engine groaning under the weight of its own suicide mission. Ahead, the Iron Kings finally realized what was happening. Shouts erupted. What the? He's coming straight in. Drop him! Drop him! The first muzzle flashes sparked from the perimeter. Rounds punched into the tanker's front grille, windshield, and sides. Sparks sprayed like angry fireflies. Bullets pinged and clattered off metal, some tearing straight through the cab near Brent's shoulders. He didn't slow. He didn't blink. He only growled under his breath. This is for Jessica. The warehouse loomed closer, 50 yards, then 40, then 30. Guards scattered. He's crazy. Move. A mounted rifle opened up, ripping a belt of rounds into the tanker's upper hull. The silver surface shredded, venting plumes of diesel mist into the night like a bleeding leviathan. 20 yards. 10. 5. Brent launched himself out of the driver's door, hit the pavement hard, rolled over gravel, metal, and dust until his ribs burned. He didn't even wait to check if anything was broken. He scrambled to one knee, thumb hovering over the detonator clipped to his vest. The tanker plowed into the warehouse wall, thunder. Metal shrieked. Concrete split. The truck skidded half its length inside the building, spearing a supporting beam. Brent squeezed the trigger. The shaped charges ignited with a concussive roar. The night became a sun. The diesel tanker erupted into a nightmare bloom of flame, searing orange and white, a tidal wave of combustion that split the warehouse's side wide open. Shock waves blasted Brent backward, the heat slamming into him like a physical fist. The entire building shuddered, groaned, then began swallowing itself in fire. Brent forced himself up, coughing, blinking through the wall of smoke and swirling ash. His ears rang like a struck bell, but his mind was razor clear. He walked straight into the furnace. Inside the warehouse, the world had dissolved into chaos. Burning pallets fell like fiery rain. Rifles and ammunition cooked off, popping from the heat. Flames crawled along oil-stained floors and climbed walls hungry for oxygen. Shapes stumbled in the smoke. Iron King's prospects, choking, screaming, trying to fire blindly. Brent moved among them like a shadow. A shape lunged at him through the haze, swinging wildly. Brent seized the man's wrist, twisted, snapped the elbow backward with a brittle crack, then struck him across the throat. The prospect collapsed, gasping. Another appeared behind a collapsing crate stack, firing erratically. Brent dropped to a knee, grabbed a discarded pistol from the floor, and fired once. The man fell. Brent didn't stop, didn't hesitate, didn't feel. He climbed over broken metal shelving, ducked under sparking wires and pushed deeper toward the second-floor walkway where the Corps members would have run. The firestorm roared around him. The screams grew louder. Near the back stairwell, he found the first one, Nash. The man was crawling across the scorched metal walkway, half his shirt burned away, skin blistered and peeling. He left a trail of blood, soot, and melted rubber from his boots. No, 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 not you. You're dead, we saw. Nash whimpered, dragging himself with trembling arms. Nash, Brent said, stepping onto the walkway. Nash froze. His voice cracked. Please. Brent kicked his ribs, flipping him onto his back. Nash shrieked in agony. You filmed Jessica, Brent said softly. You held the camera while she burned. Nash sobbed. Reaper made me, I swear. Brent ignored him. He raised his phone, hit record, and filmed Nash's terror shaking through his body, the same way Nash had filmed Jessica's final moments, without mercy, without humanity, without a trace of regret. Say your name, Brent ordered. Nash trembled violently. D. David Nash, Iron King's good, Brent said. Now crawl. Nash gasped, confused and terrified. What? Crawl, Brent repeated, just like she did. Nash burst into tears. Brent kept filming. He left Nash there, crawling and sobbing on the melting walkway, and moved deeper under the flaming beams. The second one found him first, Rupert Jacobs. Jacobs came barreling through a curtain of smoke, face blackened with soot, eyes manic. He tackled Brent against a half-collapsed support strut, a knife flashing in his hand. You should have died with her, Jacobs roared. Brent slammed his elbow into Jacobs' jaw, grabbed his wrist, twisted, and slammed Jacobs' forearm into the hot metal beam until the knife dropped. Jacobs bit Brent's shoulder, going feral. Brent headbutted him twice hard. Blood sprayed. Jacobs staggered. Brent hooked his arm around Jacobs' neck and drove him backward through a burning doorway. The two crashed onto the floor. Brent pinned him with a knee to the chest and struck him once. Twice. A third time. Jacobs stopped moving. Brent stood, breath heavy, and continued. The third man never even saw him coming. Moses Warren lay, crushed beneath a fallen steel support beam near the center of the warehouse. His legs were pinned under thousands of pounds of twisted metal. Flames were licking closer, reflecting in his terrified eyes. He wheezed, reaching out weakly when he saw Brent. I can't move. Help me help. Brent knelt beside him, looked him over, and said nothing. Warren choked. Please, Brent, man, I didn't even touch your wife. That wasn't me. Brent leaned close. You stood there. Warren shook, tears mixing with soot. I'm sorry, please. Brent rose without another word and walked away, leaving Warren screaming behind him as fire crawled over the debris. The final man was beyond saving. James Farmer stumbled below the second-floor walkway, engulfed in fire, rolling on the floor in a futile attempt to put himself out. His voice tore through the building, shrill, agonized, inhuman. Help! Help me! God help me! Brent watched from above, calm, detached. Flames consumed Farmer's clothes, then his skin, then the air around him. The man writhed until he couldn't anymore. Then he stopped. Brent moved on. When he returned to Nash, the walkway had begun to sag from the heat. Nash clutched the railing, sweat and blood dripping from his face, eyes red and frantic. Help! Help me! I can't, the floor, please. Brent didn't help him. He zip-tied Nash's wrist to the support beam, tight, immovable. No, Brent, please, don't leave me here, please. You left Jessica, Brent said quietly. The warehouse groaned above them. The roof began to cave. Flames chewed through steel and would like hungry teeth. Brent backed away into the smoke, Nash screaming after him. Please, please, I'm sorry. The collapse began. Beams cracked. Fire roared. And Brent walked out of the warehouse as it fell in on itself, leaving Nash screaming inside the inferno. Chapter 9. The Funeral and the Cover-Up. The city was silent in a way that felt almost unnatural. Even Los Angeles, with its constant hum of engines, horns, and human impatience, seemed to pause that afternoon. Brent Duke navigated the back streets, the white van long gone from Terminal Island, leaving only the echoes of fire and collapsing steel behind him. Dust and ash still hung faintly in the air, drifting on the breeze like ghost particles. By 3:15 p.m., Brent reached the small, tree-lined cemetery where the funeral had been hastily arranged. The grounds were modest, adorned with white lilies and a scattering of condolence wreaths. Friends, family, and a few colleagues had gathered quietly, their murmurs carried away on the wind. The sun had shifted, casting long shadows that made the tombstones look like soldiers standing at attention. Brent parked his truck a short distance from the service, avoiding the cluster of mourners. He didn't want eyes on him, not now. He stepped out, his boots crunching against the gravel, and adjusted the dark sunglasses over his bloodshot eyes. He didn't look around. He didn't wave. He just moved toward the open casket. The casket itself was simple, made of polished oak. White satin cradled the body of Jessica, her face serene as if she were only sleeping. Her hands, folded over her stomach, held the last trace of life that Brent had failed to protect. But he had kept something else, something he'd promised. He knelt slowly beside the casket, head bowed. His gloved hands rested on the polished wood. The sound of distant wind chimes from a nearby tree mixed with the low hum of a mourner softly sobbing. Brent's mind was a battlefield of memory and discipline. He had finished the Terminal Island assault minutes ago. For core members of the Iron Kings no longer lived to terrorize anyone. Nash, Jacobs, Warren, Farmer, all gone or burning as he left them. He whispered, barely audible, "I kept my promise." No one heard. He didn't want them to. The priest's voice continued to drone through the ceremony, offering words of comfort and blessing. Brent didn't listen. The promise had been fulfilled. The vengeance had been executed with the precision of a Marine raider, and now it was time for the silence that followed. Detective Granville Downs, having surveyed Terminal Island hours earlier, arrived at the cemetery in plain clothes. He approached Brent quietly, notebook in hand. His face bore the tension of a man who had glimpsed something beyond the legal boundaries, something primal. "Brent," Downs said, keeping his voice low, "I need to know where you were last night." Brent's eyes remained fixed on Jessica. He did not flinch. "Out of town," he replied, as simple as the truth could be. Downs arched an eyebrow. "You expect me to believe you weren't anywhere near the explosion?" "I expect you to focus on the funeral," Brent said, his tone steady. He did not raise his voice. There was no room for argument. Downs scribbled notes anyway, frowning. He had walked through Terminal Island. There were scorch marks, twisted beams, evidence of explosives, and a massive diesel fire. He had found bullet casings, some standard, some custom, and signs of meticulous planning. Deliberate, calculated. But there was nothing pointing directly to Brent. No fingerprints, no surveillance footage, no witnesses placing him there. The law could not touch him. He exhaled slowly. "It looks deliberate," he murmured, glancing at Brent, who said nothing. "But there's nothing solid. No way to prove it." Brent finally turned his gaze toward him, calm, unflinching. "Then it stays an accident." Downs nodded slowly. "Industrial accident. That's what we'll file it as. But Brent, be careful. People like you, they make mistakes, and when the feds start asking questions, it's not going to end quietly." Brent said nothing. He didn't need to. Downs understood. Later, after the funeral had ended and the mourners had begun to disperse, a black sedan pulled up discreetly. The door opened to reveal Mayor Monroe Johnston, the man whose anti-gang legislation had ignited the chain of events that led to Jessica's death. His face was pale, eyes rimmed with red. He moved slowly, as though the weight of the city itself rested on his shoulders. Brent stepped aside, allowing the mayor to approach. Johnston's hand rested on Brent's shoulder briefly, a silent gesture of gratitude and acknowledgement. There were no words. Words were useless. "I know what you did," the mayor whispered, voice tight, controlled, almost breaking. I can't say it officially, but I know." Brent remained silent, letting the moment linger. "You have to leave," Johnston continued. "Now, before the federal agencies dig too deep, before anyone starts connecting the dots." He pulled a small envelope from inside his jacket and handed it to Brent. Inside were two things: A plane ticket to Montana and a property deed for the land Brent and Jessica had once dreamed of building a cabin on. Brent opened the deed, his fingers brushing the smooth paper. Montana, the quiet. A place to disappear, to breathe, to hunt, to live with the silence Jessica's absence had created. "You saved us," Johnston said quietly. Not with words, exactly, but in the gravity of his presence. "Saved everyone, in your own way." Brent looked at the mayor, finally allowing a faint exhale. No nod, no smile, just recognition and understanding. The city had been spared further bloodshed. Justice had been served, even if it had been outside the law. Brent folded the envelope, placed it carefully in his jacket pocket, and turned toward the road. The cemetery was empty now, the mourners gone. Only the wind whispered among the gravestones. He paused briefly, one last glance at Jessica's casket before slipping out. The black sedan remained parked as Brent walked to his truck, the mayor watching him go, a quiet sentinel over what had been done. No one could follow him. Not now. Not ever. The city had its story. The law had its story. Brent had his. The engine roared softly as he started the truck. The road ahead stretched toward the outskirts of Los Angeles, toward freedom, toward Montana. Dust and light played along the asphalt as he merged into the fading afternoon traffic. Each mile carried him farther from the city, farther from vengeance fulfilled, farther from the ashes of Terminal Island and the screams of the Iron Kings. For the first time in days, perhaps weeks, he allowed himself a slow, measured exhale. The firestorm, the blood, the destruction, it had all been completed. The cost had been immense. The consequences untraceable. He drove past the freeway signs, past warehouses, past the familiar skyline of a city he would never return to. Los Angeles had been a battlefield, a crucible, a memory. Montana awaited, silent, untouched, and vast. The mountains, the forests, the land he and Jessica had dreamed of. The cabin they would never share together, now a place of quiet reflection and solemn remembrance. Brent didn't speak. He didn't think. He simply drove. Every curve of the road, every passing car, every distant billboard blurred into insignificance. His promise had been kept, and with that, he left the city forever. Chapter 10, 5 years later. Balance, not peace. The Montana sky stretched endlessly, a deep, boundless canvas of blue that bled into the towering pines. Brent Duke stepped out of the cabin he had built himself, the smell of fresh-cut timber mingling with the crisp mountain air. The cabin stood alone on the ridge, overlooking a valley stitched with streams and forests. This was the land he and Jessica had dreamed of, a place for life, laughter, and family that would never come. Now it was just him. He adjusted his rifle across his shoulder and slung a leather satchel full of supplies over the other. The deer season was beginning, and he had learned long ago that sustenance was both physical and ritual. Hunting grounded him, kept his body sharp, and gave him a reason to rise before dawn. As he walked through the dense underbrush, the snow from a late frost crunching under his boots, Brent's mind drifted. Not to Terminal Island, not to the flames and screams, not to the Iron Kings. Those memories were coiled tightly now, tucked behind layers of discipline. No, he thought of Jessica, her laugh, the warmth of her hand in his, the way she had loved, fiercely and completely. He shook his head, clearing the memory. Hunting required focus, precision, and in Montana, life demanded respect for silence. He raised his rifle to a distant clearing and spotted a buck grazing near the stream. Breath steady, finger poised, heart steady. A single shot cracked the morning air, and the deer collapsed. Brent exhaled slowly. Necessary. He knelt to inspect his prize, murmuring, "For you, Jess, for Emma." Returning to the cabin, he dressed the meat, hung it in the smokehouse, and cleaned his weapons. The days were long, often lonely, but structured. He rarely left the property. Few knew he existed here, and he preferred it that way. Sleep came in short bursts, often interrupted by dreams, fires, screams, Jessica's face, but he had learned to wake, breathe, and let them fade. It was an ordinary morning when he broke the routine. He had been avoiding all news outlets, social media, and even local chatter. But the small kitchen radio, left on for background static, carried a report he could not ignore. And thanks to the continued efforts of Mayor Monroe Johnston, Los Angeles sees a significant decrease in organized gang activity. Law enforcement officials praise the work done by heroes who get no recognition. Brent's hands froze on the knife he was using to process meat. His pulse didn't race, didn't spike. Instead, a quiet understanding settled over him. Monroe had succeeded, not because of the law, not because of paperwork, but because of what Brent had done. The hero the mayor mentioned was silent, unseen, untraceable. Brent didn't need to claim recognition. He understood the praise was for him anyway. He turned the radio off and stepped outside, letting the wind whip against his face. The mountains stretched endlessly, silent witnesses to the life he had carved out here. He breathed in, cold air filling his lungs, and felt the balance he had restored, but not peace. Peace would require forgiveness, and he wasn't sure he could ever forgive. Brent walked to the small wooden dock that extended over the frozen lake behind his cabin. Ice cracked softly underfoot as he tested the edges. He sat, rifle resting beside him, and watched the reflection of the mountains ripple across the water. The sun glinted off the distant peaks, golden and pristine. The reflection looked perfect, flawless, but the surface of the water hid rocks, currents, and shadows below, just as his life hid scars beneath control and routine. A crow called from the ridge above. Brent didn't flinch. The animal had survived by knowing what to avoid and when to strike. He understood. Inside the cabin, he finally let himself sit in the small living room, where a single framed photograph hung above the fireplace. Jessica, wedding dress flowing, veil shimmering, Brent looking at her like she was the only person in the world. His fingers brushed the frame, tracing her face. He allowed a faint smile, private and fleeting. This was his memory, untouched by time or fire. He poured a small glass of whiskey, the amber liquid catching the sunlight through the window. He sipped slowly, letting the warmth creep through his chest. The alcohol didn't erase nightmares, but it softened the edges. He exhaled and set the glass down. Balance, not peace, he whispered to the empty room, repeating the words he had adopted as his mantra. Revenge hadn't healed him. It hadn't brought Jessica back. It hadn't returned the life they were supposed to share. But it had restored order. The world, in his small way, had been set right. The Iron Kings were gone. Los Angeles was safer. Monroe Johnston continued to fight legitimately, free from the Iron King's shadow. That was enough. Outside, a hawk circled above the cabin, wings spread wide, effortlessly riding the wind currents. Brent stood, following its flight, feeling a strange kinship. Like the hawk, he had survived the chaos, adapted, and now moved deliberately in a world defined by his own rules. The sun began its descent, turning the sky into streaks of orange, pink, and violet. The forest and mountains reflected the colors, a vast tapestry of life untouched by the violence he had left behind. Brent walked to the edge of the ridge, rifle slung casually across his back, hands in his pockets. He paused, closed his eyes, and let the wind carry memories away. He knew he would never be completely free. The images of fire, the sound of Jessica's last screams, and the echo of a baby that would never cry, they were etched into him permanently. But he also knew he had kept his promise. That thought, steady and unwavering, anchored him. Returning to the cabin, he fed the fire in the hearth, lighting it with the precision and care of someone who had spent decades in operations where mistakes could cost lives. He moved through the cabin, checking the locks, the windows, the perimeter, habits he had formed in the Marine Raiders, habits that had saved his life countless times. Finally, he paused before the fireplace, staring again at Jessica's wedding photo. Her eyes seemed to hold a question, and he felt compelled to answer silently. "I did what I had to do," he said. "I kept my promise." And that was enough. The sky outside darkened, the first stars appearing in clusters over the Montana wilderness. The cabin glowed warmly from within, a beacon of survival, resilience, and memory. Brent stood alone, quiet but not broken, haunted but disciplined, damaged but in control. He moved to the bedroom, the rifle carefully stored beside the bed. Sleep would come, fitful and fractured, but it would come. The nightmares would visit, and he would endure. The balance he had restored in the world outside mirrored the balance he now fought to maintain within himself. The last thought before closing his eyes, before letting the Montana night wrap around him like a blanket of solitude, was simple. He had done everything he could. He had lived, fought, and avenged. He had honored Jessica and Emma, even in their absence. And in the quiet aftermath, beneath a sky so vast it swallowed all sorrow, Brent understood the truth he had carried for 5 long years. He had kept his promise, and that was enough.